The heat had settled into the bones of the earth, the kind that dried out tongues and cracked the edges of wagon wheels. Dust hung in the air like judgment, and the town of Perdition Gulch didn't look kindly on stragglers, let alone a crippled widow limping into the heart of its square. Mabel Tressler leaned heavily on her cane, every step a mutiny from her right leg, shattered years ago by a bullet that had never been removed. Her skirt, faded blue and dragging through the grit, clung to the wooden boardwalk as she passed the saloon. Men with tobacco-stained grins paused mid-spit to gawk. One chuckled. Hell didn't know ghosts came in skirts. Mabel didn't look up. Her fingers, gnarled from labor and grief, clenched tighter around the polished handle of her cane. Ahead loomed the land office, a small building with cracked windows and a roof that sagged like it was ashamed of itself. The brass nameplate on the door read Perdition Land Registry, L. Brand, Commissioner. Inside, the room smelled of dried ink and old anger. Luther Brand sat behind a pine desk, his girth spreading like dough beneath his tailored vest. His fingers, fat and jeweled, tapped idly at the desk as he watched Mabel enter. Well, he drawled. You're a long way from the widow's hollow, Mrs. Tressler. I'm here to register a claim, she said. Luther tilted his head. You don't say. And what dirt would a lady like you be after? My husband's. Ezekiel Tressler. He died defending it. She pulled a folded, creased document from her satchel. Her hand trembled, not from fear, but from the strain of standing so long. Brand took it, squinted. This old thing? Honey, that land was never finalized. Besides, it's wild country, rocky, dry. No one's worked it in years. It's ours, Mabel said, voice low, flinty. Brand leaned back, the chair groaning. Why now? You've been quiet since the funeral. Folks figured you'd slither off to your kin in Texas. She met his eyes. Because now I'm ready. A slow laugh rippled through his throat. What's a broken woman with no money and no men gonna do with 80 acres of desert? Live on it, she replied. Raise what's left of my family on it. And maybe bury some bones on it if I have to. Behind her, the door creaked. Mabel didn't turn, but she felt the silence thicken. Brand leaned forward. Let me paint a picture for you, widow. That land's wanted. The railroad's coming through the valley. I've already got half the papers ready to sell it to Eastern men with iron in their pockets. You're late. I'm not asking, Mabel said. I'm informing. Brand's expression shifted. Not quite fear, but something near it. His eyes flicked past her shoulder. A whisper passed outside the office, like wind over broken glass. Townsfolk were gathering, slowly, cautiously. Windows were darkened by curious eyes. Mabel turned. The first rider emerged from the dust like a memory, broad-shouldered, dark-eyed, a scar running across his left cheek. Micah. Her eldest. The one who'd gone to war and come back with silence stitched into his soul. Behind him rode 6 more. Jude, second oldest, silent and deliberate, reined in beside his brother. His rifle rested casually across his lap. Silas came next, grinning like the devil dared him to smile, his revolver spinning once in his hand before settling at his side. Then came Levi, thick-armed and stoic, the family's anchor. The twins, Noah and Jonah, shared a horse as they always had, one calm and keen-eyed, the other wild as a kicked hornet's nest. Last was Abel, black coat, wide-brimmed hat, and the weary gaze of a man who'd once tried to save souls and now carried a pistol instead of a Bible. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Brand rose halfway, then sank again. His fingers slid the deed across the desk like it burned. You got your claim, Mrs. Tressler? I thought so. Mabel turned, cane striking wood with every step, and walked out into the sunlight. The crowd had thickened. Whispers coiled like smoke. Tressler's boys. Didn't know they were still alive. Thought they scattered after the fire. She brought him back. She said nothing. Her sons flanked her like wolves, silent, formidable. Together they walked down the center of Perdition Gulch, every bootstep a warning. Children pressed against their mothers. Shopkeepers lowered their eyes. Not because they feared her, no, because they'd forgotten her. And now she reminded them. They stopped at the edge of town, where the dusty trail split west toward the unclaimed horizon. Micah dismounted and offered her the reins to a sturdy mule. Can't ride a horse no more, she said. Didn't bring you a horse. She took the reins, adjusted her saddlebag. Pain danced up her leg like hot coals, but she ignored it. You sure about this, Ma? Silas asked, chewing a toothpick between his teeth. Mabel gave him a sideways glance. You asking if I'm scared? No, ma'am, he said quickly. Good. 'Cause I am. But scared ain't the same as done. Jude adjusted his rifle strap. Brand won't let this lie. Let him try, said Levi. We got more grit than he's got gold. They rode out. 7 sons and 1 crippled widow, following the winding trail toward a patch of dry land no one wanted, until now. The ride was long, the silence broken only by the rhythmic jangle of tack and the low murmur of wind across empty plains. Buzzards circled high, shadows flickering over rocks like omens. The landscape grew harsher, thornbrush, sun-bleached bones and heat waves rippling off stone. It was land that didn't yield easy. Looks worse than I remember, muttered Jonah, nudging Noah. It'll look better when we've built on it, Noah said. Or when the vultures get us. Mabel rode at the front. Every bounce sent fire through her leg, but she didn't flinch. She watched the trail, the land, the horizon. There was no glory in it, no gold, just a promise. One Ezekiel had died keeping. One she intended to fulfill. They crested a ridge by late afternoon. Below lay the land. Scrub-dotted, jagged, scorched. A dried creek snaked through the edge with a few cottonwoods clinging to life. In the distance, the charred remains of their old cabin stood like a scar on the landscape. Mabel didn't cry. She had no tears left. This is it, she said. Micah scanned the land. Still defensible. Good vantage from the north ridge. We'll need to dig a new well, Levi noted. The last one caved in. Silas spat into the dust. We'll need more than that. Tools, seeds, ammo. We'll get what we need, Mabel said. Jonah scratched his head. And what if someone tries to take it again? Then we make sure they don't get up the second time, Jude replied. Abel removed his hat, squinting against the sun. There'll be blood. There always is, Mabel said. That's the cost of anything worth keeping. They set up camp that night by the ruins. The old hearth still stood, blackened stones cold and silent. The moon rose over the ridge, casting silver across the dry earth. Mabel sat alone near the fire, Cain resting beside her. Her sons gathered nearby, voices low, planning, remembering, joking quietly as only brothers can. She watched them, grown men now, worn by time, bent but not broken. She had raised them with calloused hands and stern love, fed them when she went hungry, taught them to aim straight, to lie only when it counted, and to never leave a brother behind. And now they'd return to her. Not because she asked, because they remembered. The wind picked up. Somewhere a coyote called. Mabel whispered, not to her sons, not to the night, but to the man buried beneath the rocks on the hill above. We're back, Zeke. We're home. In the darkness, 7 shadows stood tall around one frail woman, and the land itself seemed to pause, holding its breath for what would come next. The sun hadn't yet cleared the peaks when the Trestlers began their descent into the valley. Mist clung to the lower hills, like ghosts reluctant to leave, and every hoofbeat on the trail felt like a defiance of time itself. Mabel sat astride her mule, upright despite the pain stitched into her bones. She didn't speak, didn't need to. The boys followed behind, fanning out slightly, eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting trouble to rise from the dust. At the bottom of the ridge, the valley opened like a wound. Dry grass waved in the breeze, brittle and sun-bleached, and the old fence posts leaned in surrender. The skeletal cabin ahead had half a roof and no door. One wall had collapsed in on itself, timbers rotted through from neglect and time. Still, the chimney stood tall, blackened but unbroken. Mabel dismounted with effort. Micah moved to help her, but she waved him off. If I can't stand on this land, I don't deserve to own it. She used her cane to step forward, slow but deliberate. The porch creaked beneath her weight, echoing memory. Her fingers brushed the doorway, what was left of it, and she paused. I gave birth to Jude right over there, she said softly, pointing to a bare corner of the room. Right on a mattress made of straw and feathers. Jude glanced down, lips twitching. I recall being told I came out already scowling. You did, Mabel said. Didn't stop until you were 6. They chuckled lightly, a rare warmth amid the ash and ruin. Then Micah cleared his throat. We should set watches. I'll take first. Jude and Noah after me. Mabel nodded. We'll need water by tomorrow. Levi, you remember the creek bed? Levi, quiet as ever, gave a short nod. I'll find it. Might still be a spring down under. Silas, Jonah, she continued, check what's left in the storage pit. There might be tools. Silas grinned, flicking a match against his boot heel. If there's whiskey down there, I'm claiming squatters' rights. If there's whiskey, it's 20 years past good, Mabel muttered. The brothers fanned out like muscle fibers pulling taut again. It wasn't just instinct, it was inheritance. Each man moved with purpose, driven by the weight of the place, by the echo of their father's voice and the sharpness of their mother's. Abel remained behind with Mabel, watching the others disappear over the rise or into the ruin. "You're not assigning me anything?" he asked. "You'll know what to do when it's time," she said. He tilted his head. "And what if it's time already?" She looked at him. Abel, who once spoke with scripture in every breath and now rarely uttered more than a sentence without regret. His right hand rested near his pistol, not out of threat but comfort. Like he couldn't quite remember who he was without it. "If it is," she said, "then God help whoever's fool enough to make us prove it." By dusk, the camp had begun to take shape. They cleared out what remained of the interior, set up lean-tos with salvaged timber and canvas, and dug a fire pit. Levi returned with news of water, muddy but flowing a few feet down. Silas unearthed a rusted hatchet and a tin box of nails. They ate what little they had, passed around a bottle of corn liquor Noah had accidentally brought from town, and settled into their respective posts. The stars came out like pinpricks in a black shroud. Coyotes sang distant and sharp. Mabel sat near the fire, face shadowed by flame. Her sons watched her more than the flames. Each of them bore scars, some on the skin, others carved deep where eyes couldn't see. And none of them spoke of it. Midnight passed. The wind shifted. Jude, crouched just beyond the edge of camp, stiffened. The snap. Soft like a boot on dry twigs. Another. He raised a hand. Noah, on the opposite edge, dropped into a crouch. Micah emerged from the shadows, rifle already drawn. The fire died to embers with a quick stomp from Levi. Mabel reached for her cane, not to run but to stand. They waited. From the dark came movement, fast and scattered. Two shapes darted through the brush toward the horses. Another skulked low, heading toward the cabin's rear. "Three," whispered Jude. Micah nodded once. "No one shoots unless I say." Jude vanished into the dark like a wraith. Noah followed the one near the cabin. Silence, then a thud, a cry muffled too late. The third man reached the horses, cutting a rein. "Now," Micah barked. Silas moved first, noiseless, quick, and before the man could mount, he was on him. A grunt, a flash of steel. The intruder dropped. Not dead but pinned. Jude returned, dragging a skinny man by the collar, blood leaking from his nose. "Stupid this one," he said. Micah kicked the would-be thief's boot. "Who sent you?" No answer. Silas twisted the man's wrist until bone cracked. He yelped. "Brand?" Micah asked again, eyes narrowing. The pinned man cursed under his breath. "He said it was just some cripple and a few stray boys. Didn't say nothing about an army. Next time he'll send more than 3, Jude muttered. Micah looked to Mabel, who stood now, her eyes sharp and hollow. She nodded once. "Tie them to the tree line. No food. Let them find their way back. Or not." They obeyed without question. Dawn came slowly, as if unsure whether to trust the land with light. The Trestlers didn't speak of the night's ambush. They doubled their watch instead. Worked faster. Dug deeper. Jude built a perch above the ridge. Levi reinforced the remaining wall of the cabin with stone. Silas cleaned his revolver while whistling something off-key. Mabel spent her hours writing in a worn ledger, recording every nail used, every shovel of dirt turned. It was a habit from years ago when Ezekiel had done the same. They'd built their first home nail by nail, acre by acre, with no help from anyone but each other. Now she was doing it again, with sons instead of a husband, with blood instead of time. That evening, as they sat around the fire eating beans with hardtack, Abel spoke. "He won't stop." Everyone knew who he meant. Mabel stirred her food. "No, he won't. He's got hired men. Money. Lawyers. We've got rifles, grit, and 7 sons raised by someone meaner than any banker." Silas grinned. "Damn right." Abel didn't smile. "He'll try again. Next time it won't be scouts. It'll be a message." "I hope it's loud," Jude muttered. Noah leaned forward. "We can't win if we wait to be hunted." Jude gave a slow nod. "I've seen how Brand's men move. Sloppy. Paid guns with no cause." Micah's eyes met Mabel's. "We can strike first." "No," she said, sharp and final. "Pause. You go to him, you make him the victim. Let him reach first. Let him bloody the earth. Then we bury him in it." Even Jonah didn't argue. Later that night, Abel sat beside her. "You ever think we're just feeding the land what it wants?" he asked. She didn't look at him. "The land don't want anything. It just takes what's left." He nodded slowly, then rose and took up his watch. The fire crackled, low and defiant. Around it sat the last breath of the Tressler name, 7 men born of fire, forged by ruin, and drawn back not by gold or justice, but by the pull of blood. Mabel stared into the flame. They'd made it through one night, but she could already feel the weight of the next. By the 4th day the rhythm had settled into something like purpose. The sun still blistered their backs, and the dust still clung to every crease of cloth and skin, but the land no longer felt foreign. It began to respond. The dry soil gave way beneath shovels. The old stone hearth warmed again with fire. The wind, once howling and indifferent, carried the sound of hammers, the grunt of labor, the faint rise of laughter from time to time. The Tressler brothers worked with an urgency not born from fear but necessity. Each blow of the axe, every measured swing of the pickaxe, was a statement. We're staying. Jude and Noah hauled logs from a nearby grove, sweating through their shirts by noon, their backs slick and glinting under the high sun. Levi repurposed timbers from the collapsed barn, reshaping beams and nailing them into place with steady hands. Silas took it upon himself to build a makeshift lookout tower, 3 logs high, lashed with rope and braced with stones. Not pretty, he said, squinting at it, but I'll see a man coming before he smells breakfast. Jonah and Noah set snares along the creek, small loops tucked beneath brush. They returned with rabbits, stringy but edible. It's meat, Noah shrugged, dropping one at Mabel's feet. You boys want seasoning, I suggest you find a patch of thyme. Jonah raised a brow. You planting herbs out here too? I planted you, didn't I? He snorted and went to skin the catch. Abel had found a rhythm different from the others. He spent his mornings hauling water, his afternoons cleaning and sharpening blades, and his evenings walking the perimeter. Always quiet. Watching. Sometimes reading from the weathered Bible he carried tucked inside his coat, but he never preached. The old sermons had dried up in him like spring-fed creeks turned to dust. One morning, Mabel found him by the grave Ezekiel had once dug for a stillborn calf. It was now a mound of earth marked by 2 weathered boards crossed together. No name. No flowers. Just the place where Ezekiel had fallen. Abel didn't turn when she approached. I never buried a man, he said, voice low. Plenty of words over graves, but never the dirt itself. You preach different when you put someone in the ground yourself. He nodded once. He died protecting this land. And us. Mabel leaned on her cane. Her leg ached worse in the mornings, and the limp felt heavier when her thoughts dipped too deep. You didn't see him, she whispered. He stood with a broken rifle. There were 3 of them. I don't know why they didn't shoot me first. Abel closed the Bible and turned toward her. Maybe they didn't see you as the threat. They'd see different now. He almost smiled. They would. Back at the homestead, Micah was going over the boundaries with Jude. They had drawn them in the dirt, rocks marking corners. 80 acres of wild, stubborn land, unclaimed, unwanted until now. Brand won't let us hold this without a fight, Jude muttered, adjusting the crude map with his boot. He already started, Micah replied. He'll come again. Bigger? Smarter. Jude scratched at his beard. We could preempt it. Take the fight to him. Micah shook his head. Ma wants us to hold. Not provoke. She's thinking legacy. I'm thinking logistics. She's thinking both. Jude looked toward the house, what little stood of it, and toward the woman seated by the fire, slowly sewing a tear in Jonah's shirt. Her back was straight, her hands steady. No one mistook her for weak anymore. Micah said, she didn't bring us here to start a war. She brought us here to finish something. Finish what? Being afraid. The tension in town was growing. They heard from a trader passing through that Luther Brand had been stirring the pot, whispering poison in ears, feeding liquor to tongues willing to spread it. Bandits, that's what they are, the trader had said, flicking a coin into Silas's hand. That's the word on your family now. Said you came riding in like outlaws, took the land by force. Mabel didn't even blink. Let him say what he likes. Truth has a longer shelf life than gossip. Still, the words mattered. The sheriff had yet to make an appearance, but they all knew it was a matter of time. The law in Perdition Gulch didn't act unless it smelled blood or gold. That night the fire crackled low. The brothers gathered around it, bowls in hand, steam rising from a rabbit stew that barely masked its bitterness. Silas broke the silence. You remember the year the flood took the north fence? Jonah grinned. Pa made us all rebuild it in 3 days. And he worked harder than any of us, added Levi. He used to hum when he built, Abel said softly. Some hymn. I never could place it. It wasn't a hymn, Mabel said, looking into the fire. It was something his mother taught him. A lullaby. They fell quiet again. Micah stood, the firelight catching his silhouette, hardening it into something nearly mythic. "We stay ready," he said. "We keep building. We don't fire first." Jude lifted his bowl in mock salute. "To peace through superior firepower." A few chuckled. The stew was terrible, but the company was solid. At the edge of camp, Noah kept watch. His eyes scanned the ridge where the shadows pooled, and for a moment, he thought he saw movement. A flicker. Then nothing. He didn't raise alarm. Not yet. Just gripped his rifle a little tighter and whispered to the night, "Try it." Morning came with sharp light and tighter nerves. They found tracks near the stream, recent, booted, and heavy. Levi crouched beside them, tracing the indent with his thumb. 6, maybe 7 riders. Didn't come close, but they're watching. Jude muttered a curse. "Scouting party." "They'll come back," Mabel said. "And they'll come close next time." Abel turned toward her. "Then what do we do?" She didn't blink. "We remind them that this land cost blood already. And we've got more to spend." They prepared. Reinforced the fence line with sharpened stakes. Dug shallow trenches. Moved supplies into the root cellar. The old cabin began to look like a fortress, crooked and stubborn. Still, the boys laughed while they worked, as if daring the threat to hurry up already. Jonah painted a crude sign that read, "Trespassers will be fed to the mule." Silas added, "And the mule's mean." But beneath the humor was a quiet tension. Everyone knew it. That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon and the world turned gold and red, Mabel stood at the threshold of the half-built home. She ran a hand along the frame, new wood cut by her sons, placed with care and sweat. Behind her, hammers rang, saws rasped, the melody of men reclaiming something stolen. She turned to Abel. "I want it done by next week. Roof, walls, chimney." "That's fast," he said. "So is a bullet," she replied. He nodded. A breeze lifted the edge of her shawl. Her eyes scanned the ridgeline, where shadows lengthened and dusk hid the watchers they knew were out there. "They'll come soon." Abel's hand drifted to his sidearm. "Let them." Mabel stared into the growing dark, her voice low. "Just make sure the land remembers who bled first." The storm rolled in just after midnight, quiet at first like a whisper crawling over the hills, but it carried with it something more than weather. The clouds boiled black against the stars, swallowing moonlight. Lightning pulsed on the horizon, distant but steady, like a war drum tuned to nature's breath. Inside the half-finished cabin, the fire was low, casting long shadows across raw timber and dirt floor. Mabel sat in her chair near the hearth, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, listening to the wind push at the walls as though testing their strength. Her cane leaned beside her. The pain in her leg had sharpened with the drop in temperature, but she'd grown accustomed to that ache. What unsettled her now was the silence outside. Noah stood guard on the south ridge. Abel paced near the horses. Jude had taken the north trail with Silas, their rifles visible in flashes of moonlight between clouds. Levi and Jonah worked to finish covering the firewood. Micah had not come back from his scouting round. That wasn't like him. The first sign came not with a gunshot, but a low whistle from Jude, sharp and urgent. It sliced through the dark like a blade. Mabel sat upright. Her fingers gripped the edge of the blanket. "Boys," she called, not loud but enough. Levi turned immediately, boot crunching dry soil. Abel froze. Jonah dropped the tarp and moved to flank the house. Jude came jogging out of the brush. "They're here," he said. 10 or 12. Maybe more. "Where's Micah?" "Didn't see him. He was supposed to meet me at the ridge." Mabel's stomach dropped, but she kept her voice steady. "They mean to trap us." "We're not the ones trapped," Abel said, already checking the chamber of his pistol. The attack didn't come with a warning. One moment the wind was just wind, and then it was fire. A bottle arced over the edge of the cabin and shattered against the far wall, flame erupting across dry wood and canvas. The explosion lit up the yard like dawn. "Go!" Mabel shouted. Levi and Jude sprinted to the edge of the cabin, ducking low, returning fire toward the tree line. Muzzle flashes blinked through the dark. The sound of gunfire cracked and rolled, thunder beneath the storm. Abel pushed Mabel behind the chimney, shielding her with his body as glass shattered overhead. Jonah dove beside Noah, who had taken cover behind the lean-to. "Where the hell did they get Molotovs?" "Doesn't matter," Noah grunted, sighting down his rifle. "Take out their hands before they throw again." Jude dropped one of the men trying to circle wide. The body hit the dirt with a thud. Mabel strained her eyes into the chaos. Smoke stung her throat. The smell of burning pine and oil filled the air. And then she saw him, Micah, limping from the edge of the treeline, blood streaming from his left shoulder. He half fell behind a log, crawled, and reached out for cover. Jude noticed him a moment later. "Cover me," he barked and ran into the open. Bullets peppered the dirt around his feet. One snapped past his ear, another cracked into a stump inches away, but he reached Micah, dragged him back toward the cabin. Levi threw covering fire with grim precision, and Abel pulled both men behind the wall. Micah coughed, spitting blood. They knew. They knew the pattern. Watched us for days. "We'll talk after you stop bleeding," Mabel said, grabbing cloth to press against his wound. He winced but grinned faintly. "Glad to see you're still charming. Shut up and hold still." The fire was spreading, licking up the side of the frame Silas had built days ago. The wind fed it greedily, and in moments the lean-to ignited. "We're going to lose the east wall," Levi called. "We lose that, they flood in," Jude shouted. Mabel's hands moved instinctively, binding, pressing, stopping the worst of Micah's bleeding, but her eyes were already elsewhere. She was calculating. "They want the house," she said. "Let them take the shell. We'll make the ground burn beneath them." Abel met her eyes. "What are you thinking?" "We built that cellar with one exit," she said. "They don't know it." He nodded slowly. "We let them come. Then we come up behind. Jude, Levi, pull back and draw them in. Silas, Jonah, get the cellar open. We'll push them into thinking they've won." Jonah grinned wide. "Oh, I like this plan." The retreat was staged with brutal efficiency. One by one the brothers fell back, keeping the illusion of desperation alive. Noah fired off the last round in his rifle and shouted for cover as if he'd run dry. By the time the attackers swarmed the cabin's yard, the structure was belching smoke and flame. 5 men moved in fast, rifles sweeping. One kicked the front door open and stepped inside. From beneath the ground, behind the ruins of the old well, the Trestlers rose. Silas was first, revolvers blazing. Abel followed, methodical, deliberate, each shot finding a mark. Jude flanked from the right, cutting down 2 with clean bursts. Levi charged headfirst, swinging the butt of his rifle, smashing a jaw. The ambush was sudden and violent. The attackers were overconfident, poorly trained. Within minutes, the ground was littered with their bodies. Those lucky enough to run vanished into the trees, dragging the wounded with them. Smoke choked the sky, but the house still stood, wounded but not gone. The east wall was ash. The roof sagged, but the core remained. Mabel stood as the last of the gunfire faded. She stepped over a fallen body and looked toward the treeline. The men were gone. The silence returned, broken only by the crackle of fire and the moans of pain. Micah was seated against the cabin wall, pale but breathing. Jude kneeled beside him, hands still bloody. "That was close," Micah muttered. "Closer than I like," Jude said. Silas limped over, bleeding from a graze on his thigh. "Next time they bring fire, I'm bringing dynamite." "Where the hell would you get dynamite?" Jonah asked. "I have contacts." Mabel looked at each of them, her boys, sweat-soaked and battered but standing. They had faced what the land demanded and hadn't flinched. "We'll rebuild," she said, her voice steady. "We'll patch the walls, fix the roof." Abel wiped his pistol clean. "And when they come again? They'll find us ready." She turned toward the fire, the embers catching in her eyes like stars. "We've held this long. We hold longer." No one doubted her. That night, they took turns guarding what remained. Jude buried the dead. Levi salvaged what hadn't burned. Mabel sat near the fire, cane in hand, back straight. The storm had passed. But the real thunder, she knew, was still building. Dawn arrived red and sullen, spilling across the valley like blood. Smoke lingered in the charred edges of the homestead, clinging to the scorched wood and half-burned canvas. The cabin still stood, defiant despite the damage, like its owner. Mabel sat beneath the front beam, cane at her side, a rifle across her knees. Her fingers brushed the barrel as if reacquainting herself with an old friend. She had slept none. None of them had. Micah stirred first, rising stiffly from his bedroll near the fire. His shoulder was wrapped tight, the bandage soaked dark at the seam. He moved slower than usual, but his eyes were sharp. When he saw his mother already awake, he nodded, nothing more. It was the way of soldiers. "They'll come back," he said. "They have to," she replied. "They didn't take what they came for." Levi passed behind them, carrying lengths of timber to shore up the wall. Jude and Noah were already down at the creek, washing blood from tools and boots. The air tasted like rust. "Brand's next move won't be men with torches," Silas muttered, chewing a piece of dried meat. "He'll come himself. He has to. His pride won't let this slide." Mabel's jaw tightened. Good. He's the one I've been waiting for. By mid-morning, word came from the south. A rider, dusty, wind-bitten, barely keeping his horse upright, stumbled into the clearing. Abel caught the reins before the animal collapsed. The man slid off, panting. Brand's coming, he wheezed. With hired guns. Real ones. Black coats. 10, maybe 15. Mabel stood slowly, the weight of her words already gathering. When? By dusk. The rider collapsed. They prepared in silence. No speeches. No drawn-out discussions. Each man moved with precise intent, like they'd been planning this for years. Perhaps they had, in dreams and memories shaped by fire and loss. Jonah sharpened blades. Jude laid fresh traps along the ridge. Noah rewired the trip alarms with bits of tin and rope. Silas scavenged the last rounds of ammunition and passed them around like relics. Levi moved stone and timber like he was built from both. Abel stood with his Bible open, reading quietly. Not a sermon, but a reminder. Micah watched them all from his perch. He held a pair of binoculars they'd taken from one of Brand's men. Through them, the dust on the trail told its truth. They're coming, he called. The family gathered at the cabin's edge. 15 riders in black coats moved like a wave across the plain. Brand rode at the center, broad-shouldered, smug in posture, wrapped in a custom duster. His face held no concern, only calculation. He stopped 100 yards out, flanked by men who looked like they'd left conscience behind years ago. Their horses steamed with sweat. Brand raised his voice. Widow Tressler, I offer you one last chance to walk away. Mabel stepped forward. The wind tugged at her shawl, and she planted her cane like a banner. This land belongs to my husband, my sons, and the blood we've already spilled on it. If you want it, come take it. Brand smirked. So be it. He drew his revolver. What followed happened fast, brutal, and without elegance. Gunfire erupted in a chorus, echoing off canyon walls. The black coats charged and the Tresslers answered. Micah fired first, dropping a rider mid-gallop. Jude took the left flank, rifle snapping with calm precision. Silas, crouched behind a barricade, fired both pistols until the chambers clicked empty, then picked up a fallen rifle and kept going. Levi roared and tackled a rider clean off his horse, slamming him into the dirt. The man didn't rise. Noah and Jonah moved like mirrored phantoms, covering each other, snaring 2 attackers in the trench line with quick, practiced shots. Abel walked straight through the smoke, both hands steady. One held a pistol. The other, the cross from his Bible's binding. He whispered as he fired, prayers and curses woven into one. Mabel did not hide. She stood on the porch, rifle braced on the post, and fired 3 times. 2 men fell. One of them had been aiming for Silas. Brand pushed forward, dismounting, shouting for his men to flank. The tide began to shift. The defenders were brave, skilled, but outnumbered. Micah fell behind a crate, out of bullets. A rider closed in. Mabel saw it and screamed his name. Before the man could strike, Jude put a round through his spine. Jonah took a shot to the arm, spun, fired again with the other hand. Silas pulled him back to cover. Smoke thickened. Screams punctured the chaos. Then came the turning point. Brand, realizing the frontal assault had failed, ordered a split. 5 men veered wide to the east, aiming to breach the cellar door. Noah intercepted 2 with a rifle blast. Levi met the others head-on, a hammer in his hand, and ended it in close combat, quick, brutal, final. Mabel limped forward through the chaos toward Brand. Her sons yelled after her, but she kept walking, the rifle now empty in her hands. She dropped it, drew the old revolver Ezekiel had left behind. Brand saw her and laughed. You think you scare me, old woman? I don't need to scare you, she said. I just need to stop you. He raised his gun, but too slow. She fired. What? The bullet caught him in the gut. He staggered, eyes wide with disbelief. He shot back, the round grazing her shoulder, spinning her half around, but she stayed on her feet. Brand dropped to his knees. You lost, she said. He coughed, blood dripping from his lips. You think the law will let you keep this? She stepped closer. I don't answer to your law. He fell face first into the dirt. Silence came next, not peaceful but heavy. The surviving attackers fled into the hills, some screaming, some silent. None stayed. The battle was over. Micah leaned against a post, watching the horizon. That it? Jude reloaded, scanning the trees. For now. Levi wiped blood from his face. We patch up, dig graves, and check the lines again. Abel helped Mabel into a chair. She winced as she sat but smiled through it. You shot him, Jonah said, limping over. You really shot him. I aimed center mass, she muttered. Didn't expect I'd hit it. They laughed. Not because it was funny, but because laughter was the only thing left that didn't cost them anything. That night the fire burned steady. The wind carried the scent of ash and gunpowder, but beneath it lingered something new: cedar from fresh beams, cooked rabbit, smoke that meant survival rather than ruin. Mabel sat wrapped in a blanket, her leg freshly dressed. Abel sat beside her, Micah across from them, the others drifting in and out of the firelight, tending wounds, whispering stories. They had held the line. The land had been bought with blood twice now. Jude stood alone for a moment, facing the ridge. When he turned back he said, "They won't try again. Not for a long time." "Long enough," Mabel said. "Long enough for what?" She looked toward the rising stars. "For the house to grow roots." For a moment no one spoke. Then quietly Abel began to hum. It wasn't a hymn. It wasn't quite a lullaby. But it was familiar, something from Ezekiel, something from before. One by one the brothers joined in. And as the wind softened and the flames settled into embers, the valley no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt like home.